All right, so we've been, Shelly taught a couple sessions on being in a supportive role, and then we had question and answer last week and question and answer this week, and let's just see where we get. I think we'll get through these, but do you have the computer if there's more you want to ask, or if you want to ask on site? So, just going through being in a supportive role, and we're all in supportive roles. A lot of us are in different roles. Some of, you play different roles based on, where you are in the day. Sometimes you wear different hats, and we need to know how to be in a supportive role, because we all do that to some degree. Nothing else, you're supporting God's work on the earth. And so that's what we've been talking about. So last week, we covered kind of the essence of, in some of the questions, the essence of being in a supportive role. And so we're going to go to another question now, but we'll hit on some of those same things, I think. So the next one is, how do you transition out of being in a supportive role? Like, for example, moving jobs. So, there's different transitions you can make. So if it's a horizontal move, and that's like taking a similar position, moving laterally, either in the same company or in a different company, but it's basically a lateral move. In other words, you have the same amount of responsibility as you did before. Maybe you're in a role that is, you don't have leadership. You don't have a leadership authority, but you're under people. Then you're going to be establishing your reputation again. In other words, these people, they don't know who you are. They may know somewhat who you are. Maybe you're moving and you got a recommendation, and the people, or you've worked with them before. It could be that. But you're going to start ready to help, supporting the people over you and helping the organization accomplish their goals. Immediately you're coming in, how can I help? How can I do of course you're getting paid to do a job if you're an employee. This is specifically about like moving jobs, but wherever you go, in whatever role you're in, if it's a supportive role, then you just want to have that same attitude. You're coming in to help. You're coming in to be a blessing. If God moves you on, typically, you're not going to move churches too many times, and especially if you're in the same geographic area, most of the time you're not going to move. You're not going to move churches. If you move out of state or God moves you on somewhere, then you're going to move churches. And, if God's moved you on there, there's probably a reason why. There's something that's moving you on the plan of God. But, again, you just want to go about doing what you know to do, being a support wherever you find yourself. For vertical moves, so if you're taking a position of greater responsibility, and this may be more what this is talking about, how do you transition out of being a supportive role? The question was, like, taking a position of greater responsibility in the same or different organization. If you're moving into leading or managing people, it's a different type of position. So even though you're using the skills somewhat that you had, obviously you got offered that job because you're moving up, it's a different game. It's not the same thing. Now you're responsible not just for your old individual contribution. In other words, you don't get reviewed based on what you just contribute. You get reviewed, or your success is measured based on the people you're managing and how they contribute and how the team works. And so it's a different role. You should treat the people, so you're going to be transitioning that. You treat them the way you want to be treated when you're in a support role, which this is not really about that. This was transitioning out of a support role, so we're not really focusing on the leadership aspect tonight. But, as you're transitioning out of that support, we've been talking about a supportive role. Well, what made you a good follower, now you know what the people are going through. So you're trying to be a leader, you're serving them, not bossing them around, providing what you need, whatever that role is, if it's a team lead or management, the leadership component of that. But because you're transitioning out of a supportive role, and if you were doing that well, then you at least are on a good foundation to start going into that leadership position and to transition out of it. That's going to be the basis. I just want to read this, and then Shelly, you can chime in. We read this last time, but Mark 10, verse 42, so a few scriptures down there. It says, "So Jesus called them together and said, 'You know that the rulers in this world lord it over their people, and officials flaunt their authority over those under them. But among you it will be different. Whoever wants to be a leader among you must be your servant. And whoever wants to be first among you must be the slave of everyone else. For even the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve others and to give his life as a ransom for many.'" So when you're leading, you're actually serving. So no matter where you are, you're serving, supportive or non.
Yeah, and so when you're going to, if you're staying in the same company, you still have the company's values, you still have the company's mindset, goals that you're serving. So even though you may be in leadership in a role, unless you are over the company, you are still in a supportive role. And so even though you have leadership, you want to represent the CEO, represent the people above you well. You don't, if you are, kind of a rough, tough, mean boss, you're representing that to the people underneath you as, the people that are over you. You're kind of that person that is setting the tone of the company. And so you want to make sure that you're setting a good tone for the company because you're still in a supportive role. And so you want to look at it like, how can I make my boss above me look good too? And so just keeping that kind of thing in mind, whether you're doing that to clients or whether you're doing it to the people underneath you, you are making your company look the best that it possibly can because of the example that you are giving. Yeah,
so you will be you'll still be in a supportive role because unless it's, like Shelly said, unless you're now, you probably wouldn't just get promoted to be over the company. Even if it's small, somebody else is probably already doing that. So you're going to be in a supportive role. Now you're in between. You're leading and you're following, but you're still representing, you're still supporting. And like somebody said, they had this thing between their team and the leader. They said, see how it went. I think the leader was saying, what's your job? And it was like, for the team to make him look good. Well, what's his job? To make them look good. You don't want to be pointing your fingers. And you don't want, and this is a tempting thing, if you transition out of being in a supportive role, especially in the same company, that can be different because these were your peers. You were in the support. Now you're over. And now all this stuff, and this is where you do not want, and we'll talk about this, I think there's some things coming up. You want to be supportive, not sowing discord, and we'll talk about that, but you don't want to be, because now you're the leader. now you're the target. When you've been the leader, you realize, oh, so this is what it's like being on the opposite side of these things, and you want to represent the people above you well. You want to represent the people underneath you well going up. And realize that you are, like Shelly said, you're representing the company or the organization. This, the question was about a job, but this applies to anything. It can apply in a church. If you're now over a group where you used to be the peer and now you're over it, well, now you're representing, like in this case, you'd be representing the leadership. You represent the pastor to that group. And there's always transition with that. People are people. I know I was working as a senior software engineer and I got promoted to the manager, and now those people that were my peers, now I'm over them. And that's a weird dynamic. Now I'm your manager and I'm their manager. It's like, and they're the person that report, and it's not a better than you thing, but people have a hard time with this sometimes. It's like, it can be different. But you got to represent. You got to realize you're representing the organization, and so all the things that made you a good supportive person can make you a good leader. There'll be additional things, but.
All right. Here's the next question. You mentioned that a leader would find it hard to work with an employee that is always negative fault finding, and this was in, I think, the first session that we had. How does one, husband or wife, proceed with this kind of behavior in a marriage while still walking in love, especially when it involves major decisions of the family? All right. Well, being negative on your spouse is never a good idea. Because if you are fault finding, if you're looking always at the negative of someone, you are going to find it, and you will have supernatural help to find it too. Because people are people, and you probably married somebody that is opposite you, and so they're not going to do things the way that you do it. And so because of that, especially if you're, you like to have things done your way, maybe you're a little controlling or whatever, and your spouse doesn't do it the way that you like things to be done, this can be a real easy thing to think that they're wrong, and to let them know that they're wrong, and to let them know forcefully that they're wrong at times, and at times, to nag, or to pester, or to throw a fit, or to throw a tantrum, because you're not getting it done the way that you want it done. And that human nature, if somebody's throwing a tantrum, your natural reaction is, forget you. I'm not giving you your way. And so if you keep that in mind, especially in a marriage relationship, there's only two of you. And so there's two people. It's not like you have, 10 employees underneath you, unless you have 10 kids. But I'm just saying, there's two of you, and you have the ability to get along or not get along. And so you want to be looking for ways, even if you disagree, even if you know that they're wrong and it should be looking a different way, you're looking for ways to focus in on the positive and help them.
So part of the question is, how do you deal with that if your spouse is the one that's being negative toward you, and how do you deal with that? Well, number one, you need to work on the relationship in general. So there's something broken there, and it's not a me versus, us versus them, even though it's two of you. There's something broken why the person is constantly nagging or constantly being negative. I mean, it's tempting to say, well, I can't do anything about that. That's them. They're just dumb. Well, number one, remember you married them. I married him, and that's a bitter pill to swallow when you're mad. You're like, you want to be mad at another person, but you got very few situations did you get, unless you got an arranged marriage, and that's a whole different thing. You can go rail against the culture or whatever, but you married the person. You say, well, they're not what I thought they were or whatever. Well, ultimately, we are responsible. So some people don't like that, but it doesn't matter. We could have heard God, and we married him. So they're our spouse, and so how can some people, maybe they're just making a decision to be difficult no matter what. But usually it's two-sided. There's something we can do that is helping. Why? Ask yourself, instead of going against them, why that they're being negative, why are they being negative? Is there something else? Why are they doing? Well, that's just them. Is there anything that I could do? Think about, it's always helpful to think about, are we contributing to the problem? Am I doing something? As humbling as that is, or, again, we'd rather just blame it on the other person. But is there something I could do? Is there something I could do to kind of grease the skids? Is there something I could do to help this? Is there something they're not getting? So that's why they're negative. But really, were they always like that? Were they like that from the get-go? And you still married them? Was that what it was? Or was it different and now it's like that? Well, is there something that's changed in the relationship? could we go back to be doing some of those things earlier? And then that's the foundation where you go forward. With a lot of these things, it's like that.
And sometimes, once you've been hurt, then if somebody touches on that subject, it's just easy to have a chip on your shoulder and it can be very, very difficult to address a specific topic. You may be able to talk about a lot of other things, but this is a sensitive subject. So it doesn't matter how nice the other person is about it. You have a response and you consider it negative, no matter how nice they are about how they say it, you're ready for battle. And so you have to consider, okay, how are we ever going to get to the other side of this? And is this person actually being negative, or am I just being kind of sensitive? Am I touchy in this subject? And it may be that you're not touchy on anything else, but there's just this area that you are, just kind of super sensitive in, and it wouldn't matter. You're going to be offended no matter how they say it or what they do. And so we have to just be aware of that and take self-inventory. I tell this to people all the time when I talk with them individually. It's like, because I'm not talking to both people, I'm only talking to the one. We can't change the other person. All we can do is look at how we're looking at life, how we're looking at the situation, how we're viewing things, and make a decision on how we want to respond, even if the other person isn't doing everything right.
Yeah, so look at yourself. Ask, is there something else I can do? That is walking in love. Be respectful of the other person. Try to see if there's something that you can work through, but sometimes, those things take time. With decisions in the family, the family's got to keep going, so you do your best to talk. Can we make this? But if one person is truly being difficult, like Shelly said, you can only control you. We like it or not, we can't change the other person. You can't. You can try, which is people keep trying and trying. You're not going to change the other person, but what you can do is see how you can work with them and then make the best decision. If you can't, it's different. Whether you're which way this is going, if you're the husband or the wife, if you're the husband and your wife's nagging and being fault-finding and you're making a decision, first of all, do you really need to make that decision? Is that something that's timely because you're going to blow stuff up by making that and pushing forward? Going, well, we're going to make it anyway. Well, you count the cost before you do that. But if you can make it, come to an agreement, that's always going to be better. And sometimes there's compromise in that. A lot of times there's compromise in that. If the wife is feeling like she's doing what she can, and the husband's constantly fault fighting, and so she's having a difficult time following, his decisions because she's feeling like she's always beat up. Well, again, both of these things are going to be like, you're going to go to the Lord. You're going to say, Lord, honestly, you're going to them. You're going to God. I can't change them. Lord, help me to get along. And then I'm going to do my role. So, we've talked about this before, but Colossians 3:18, this is, sum up, this is in Ephesians 2. But 18 says, wives, submit to your own husbands as is fitting to the Lord. Husbands, love your wives and do not be bitter toward them. So 18, wives, submit to your own husbands or respect your husbands. This, you will find, is a core for both the man and the woman. For the husband, the wives, if they are respecting their husband, it's going to go better. If they're showing disrespect, if they dismiss, if their behavior, if the fault finding is conveying the message, I don't respect you. You're not adequate. You're not good whatever. You're not a good provider. You're not a good husband. You're not a good father. That is disrespecting him. That will hit the hardest. So if it's in that area, you can be sure the husband, there's going to be a reaction. And people say, well, I can't respect him because of this. Just know that's going to cause friction, and that fault finding in that area is going to be very difficult. Likewise, for the women, it says, husbands, love your wives and don't be bitter towards them. So the wife, needs to be loved and to feel secure. And if she doesn't feel secure, so if if what the husband's doing and being negative is constantly making her feel unloved, she's going to have a bad reaction. So that's not going to go well. So then if you're dealing with the person, know this from the opposite. If the other person, you're feeling like they're constantly fault finding and it's hitting you in that area, if you're the wife and it's hitting you, you're making feel unloved, then realize that's going to hit you hard. How do I got to go to God and go the best I can to support? If it's the man, note that if it's constantly questioning your leadership, basically your adequacy as a man by disrespect, it's going to hit you hard. And so you got to go to God and say, God, help me, because I'm supposed to have this role in this relationship, but you know where I'm at. So the more you can understand that about the other person. Am I doing this to my spouse? Well, it's hard for the relationship to go forward then.
You know, and from a wife's perspective, if you do not trust your husband to make a good decision, and so you just go ahead and make the decision without his input and just be like, you're not going to do the right thing, that is showing a lack of respect for him. You're basically telling him, I don't trust you, I don't need you, I can do this myself, and you're going to mess it up anyways. And so you may even be right, but because of the way that you're going about it, you're actually hurting your relationship more than you are helping it. And so even if you are right on something, having a humble position of just like, and then taking, having a humility with your husband, but then also taking it to the Lord and saying, Lord, I really think that this is the right thing. And so either help me to be able to see this clearly the way that you're seeing it, or help him because you are over him, and help him to hear clearly, support me by helping him to see things. And we can pray that way for one another. And so, but you definitely want to be in that position of, I need you, I respect you, I think I'm trusting that you will lead.
Mm-hmm. So next one, it says, what is a healthy way to vent our frustrations? Should we only vent to God? So, God and trusted people, say is the short answer. Sure, you can vent to God. If you don't believe that, read the Psalms, read what David wrote. He was venting a lot. He was like, God, break their teeth, oh God. He did, it'll make you feel better if you read those, so you realize he was talking a lot like that, and you can go to God. Does it mean you can only go to God? No, we have people that we're walking with, but you need to make sure that they're a trusted person. Because if you vent to somebody, and vent, I don't love that word, but we understand you're having something to share. You're having somebody that you can bounce stuff off of, share, and share what's going on with, and maybe your frustration is, and there are frustrations being in a supportive role.
Yes.
Let's touch on the next question, but anyway, you will have frustration. Just don't speak that over me. I don't have to speak it over you. If you are in a supportive role and you're having to support another human being, you are going to be tempted to be frustrated. I don't care who they are. And if you think that if the person over you was so and so, you just don't know them well enough, because they're human. Ask their spouse. Ask somebody close to them. I'm not saying people are bad. I'm just saying, you're dealing with a human, and they have their quirks, and they have their way of doing stuff. And so it is a cop-out. I mean, it's an escape for us mentally to go, well, you're the problem. If I wouldn't have this problem if I was under so-and-so. That's la-la land. You don't know that. I don't know that. That's just convenient. That's like saying, if I were married to so-and-so, I wouldn't have that problem. That you can't prove that either way. So it just becomes something you can rail on, but it's not helping you. It's not helping me. And it doesn't matter who you're under. you will be tempted. So when you're tempted, when you have frustration, feeling that is not bad. It's what you do with it.
Yeah.
And if you acknowledge that, I remember I was a music minister in Lincoln, Nebraska. Okay, and I was talking. So I had, I don't know how many people that were on the music team, and I remember we had this fellowship dinner after church, and I was talking to this one lady that was on the worship team, and I knew she was having an issue with me, known her for a long time, and I was just talking to her, and I said something like, those thoughts you're having toward me when they come on me, and I was just talking to her about that, and she's like, how'd you know that? I said, because I've been where you are, because I'm tempted with the pastor. I mean, she was like, oh, how could you know that? Because just the fact that you're in a supportive role, that's it. I don't know anything else. And plus, it's all over your face, but that's another thing. I do that, but I mean, the thoughts I didn't know, but I mean, obviously you're covered. And so you need to be able to talk, but don't fall in the trap of now you're going to talk to the other people that you're serving with. Or other people you're working with. Hey, the boss is like this, or this place stinks, and the policy this, and I don't like where the company's headed, or I don't like where the church is going. Don't do that. That's sowing discord. That's a major problem. That's dividing people. And then when you get it all set, I mean, your reputation, you're talking to these people. You get it all set, you're good in your heart, but they'll come over and they start talking. Why are you talking to me? Because you were just talking to me the other week. You were coming back and saying this stuff, and now what? You're all too good? You don't want to be that person in the job. It's easy. It's so easy to do. It's so easy to be, at the lunch table, and people are just talking about the boss, or talking about this project, or talking about how we don't ever get anything on time, and how we aren't hiring people, or how we fired people, or, laid people off, and we're not hiring the right people. That's so easy. It's just like falling off a chair. I mean, you don't have to do anything. You just have to, easy. It's so don't be that person. But if you're going to share, hey, share it in humility, but I'm having this problem. This is frustrating me. If you have trust with your spouse, you can talk to your spouse. It's a great way to talk. But if you're not married, then find somebody that you can talk to that's not going to judge you. Is not going to all of a sudden become holier than thou and, oh, well, you're having a problem? Oh, I never think that way. Oh, my gosh, can't believe that. Well, no, you probably think the same. We know we think the same thing, so you need somebody that's not going to judge you, and all of a sudden, oh, you're having a problem. And then they put, their spiritual look on, and then they start quoting scripture to you. It's not helpful. It's just like what you need is somebody to listen and go, yeah, been there. Yeah, anything, yeah, and then I'm with you, And not to condone everything, especially if you're going off, but you need people in your life that can say, hey, talk to you and say, if you are going off in the weeds, tell you that. But
and another thing on this is that, sometimes we hear people say, you just need to be able to vent.
Yeah.
And yet you do sometimes need help to get through to the other side of, the frustration, or to be able to see clearly. But I've also seen the other side of this is that you talk to one person and then you repeat it to a second and a third and a fifth and a 10th. And the more you repeat it, the more angry and upset and frustrated you get. And so, there is the power of your words. And so, yes, there are times that you want to talk through things, you want to get through to the other side, but you also want to be careful, because if you're saying something, especially if you don't necessarily really believe a certain thing, and then you start going down a path and just venting and getting more and more mad, and it may not have even been that big of a deal to you to begin with, but by the end, you are just angry and just frustrated at this person. And so, you want to keep that in mind. Yes, talk it through, but you don't have to necessarily talk it through to 10 different people 10 different times. Be careful on that. You want to, you're taking it to God, And if you have prayed to God and you've talked to someone, you don't want to undo your prayers by continually talking negative about the situation. Because if you've prayed about it, and you're putting it in God's hands, and then yet you're still, talking negative, you want to be just aware that you're not really trusting God at that point. You're still like, and your mindset and your heart towards the individual or the situation, if you're not careful, is going to just make it hard for you to be able to hear God, to be able to tell you a solution to what you've asked him for.
Yep. So next one is related. I could have gone right in this one, but I thought we should separate them. It says, do you have any tips on how to submit to the authority or to authority when your flesh really wants to do something another way or the person in authority isn't respectful? So we touched on this. I want to read this, Philippians 2:19. This is Apostle Paul. He says, but I trust in the Lord Jesus to send Timothy to you shortly, that I also may be encouraged when I know your state. For I have no one like-minded who will sincerely care for your state, for all seek their own, not the things which are of Christ Jesus, but you know his proven character, that as a son with his father he served with me in the gospel. Therefore I hope to send him at once, as soon as I see how it goes with me. But I trust in the Lord that I myself shall also come shortly. Notice Paul's saying, verse 21, all seek their own, not the things which are of Christ Jesus. And he's talking about Timothy as one that's not. It is not common to be the person that supports somebody and that stays in your role that God has put you in, especially in whatever that is. It takes faith to be in any role. It takes faith to do what God's told you to do. Doesn't matter if it's a leader or follower. You think it's easy to be the leader. No, it's not. It's just a different set of challenges as to be in follower. And then, like we said, that you may be in both at the same time. But to be that person like Timothy, that I've got you. And it doesn't matter if I'm feeling frustrated. And it doesn't matter what my flesh says. And it doesn't matter that I'm challenged, that I won't move, because I am seeking Jesus Christ, and I'm doing everything as unto him. Colossians 3:23 says, whatever you do, do it heartily as to the Lord and not to men, knowing that from the Lord you will receive the reward of the inheritance, for you serve the Lord Christ. It's been kind of the foundation scripture for this whole series. Whatever you do, do it heartily as to the Lord, not to men. So you're doing it to Jesus. So you're not, yes, there's somebody over you. Yes, whether that's your boss at work, or whether it's your person over you at church, or your pastor, or whatever, you're not dealing with that person. You're serving God. So you believe, I'm supposed to be at this job. I'm supposed to be in this role. So there's somebody that's over me, and my flesh wants to be like, I'm frustrated. And like I said, we all experience this. It is regular. So when the question is, do you have any tips when your flesh really wants to do something another way? Or it also says the person in authority isn't respectful. So if the person isn't respectful, the Bible still tells us, you got to ask yourself, am I supposed to be here? See, it's easy to say, well, that person acts like this, so I'll go somewhere else. That's not the question. The question is, am I where I need to be? That's the question. Because you look at Joseph. Joseph, we talked about Joseph. Joseph, you can't say that he was always in places where people were just pumping him up. He was a slave. He was in prison. It's not somebody else's responsibility to make you or me feel good. It's not somebody else's responsibility to motivate us. Was somebody at Joseph's corner in the dungeon going, was that prison guard going, man, Joseph, you're awesome. I mean, that's you're in prison, but man, you got this, and and you're gonna rise to the top. I highly doubt it. His boss, Potiphar, was not doing this. People were not pumping him up. Joseph believed God. So he served God, so he was pressing through anything. You don't think his flesh felt stuff in the dungeon? As a slave? Probably more than we felt. But he did it anyway. So it doesn't matter if the person is respectful or not. Again, come back to. We'll deal with some, maybe some things here in a minute about, if you need to talk to them, that's a different thing. But it doesn't change the fact that we need to ask, am I supposed to be here? In other words, somebody being rude to you or me, or not doing exactly what we think they should, is no reason to get out of that position as a Christian. That's never the reason to get out of the position. Again, there's marriage things or somebody is literally abusing you. Okay, ask yourself the question then, am I supposed to be here? Because God wouldn't keep you in a place where that was literally happening. The problem is people call all kinds of stuff. They put everything into that category like I'm just being mistreated. And there's a lot of it that's not. It's just, okay, so you're dealing with a non-Christian boss or you're dealing with a Christian boss and they don't act the way you want. Welcome to the world. Question is this where I'm supposed to be? Because if the orders from the Lord didn't change, then guess what? He will give me the strength and the grace and the wisdom to prosper in that situation. Daniel, David, you go on to Paul, look in the Bible and look at the number of situations where people were in an uncomfortable spot yet served God and just held the course. And try to find the number of places where they were just being propped up by another human being. Was Jesus, I don't see Jesus going around going, you guys, man, you're just so awesome. Thanks for staying with me. You're just great. And in fact, in John, he was like, after said some strong things, then everybody's leaving him, and he's like, are you guys going to leave too? He didn't go, man, don't leave me because you guys are the best. You got my back. I know. He didn't do it. He was like, you going to leave? Here, Paul's going, man, everybody's gone. But Timothy's there. Doesn't give any indication. I don't see any indication where people are propping people up going, well, it doesn't mean they're not have a camaraderie with them, but that won't hold you.
That's true.
No matter how nice somebody is or when you feel they've crossed that line to not being like that, the niceness won't hold you. You can get out the door. What will hold you? Your allegiance to God, saying, God, I'm serving you. Therefore, I'm going to treat this person as if I'm serving you. I'm going to work like I'm serving you. That'll help you to put down your flesh. That'll help you to get through the emotion.
And again, I'm going to tie this into something that I said a little bit earlier, is that sometimes the issue where you feel like somebody isn't being respectful to you, you have to be careful that it's not just that you have a certain perspective on things, that it's really how you're seeing what they're saying to you, because somebody else, the boss could say the same thing and the other person is not offended, but they say it to you and you're like, they're this, they're that. And so you want to be careful. You don't want to have a chip on your shoulder. You don't want to be the one that is just easily offended, easily flustered, easily pushed around, because you can leave that job and you'll go to the next one and you will find yourself in the same situation. And if you find yourself having left 3, 4, 5 different jobs and that situation is still following you, then you really want to have some introspection on this and say, okay, look, I'm the common denominator in all of these different jobs. Mm-hmm. Am I looking at this, am I looking at myself as a victim instead of as the victor? Am I looking at myself, am I holding myself in high esteem, that I respect myself? And so if you could be unknowingly putting yourself under in a situation and putting yourself down, making yourself the brunt of a joke or just different things to where, people don't take you seriously, but then you're offended because you're not getting treated the way that you want to be treated. And I'm just saying this is something to look at as well. Am I giving off vibes that I have an attitude? Am I giving off vibes that I'm not easy to work with, that I have a chip on my shoulder, or that, that I'm easily offended? And if that's the case, then look at yourself the way that God sees you. And focus in on that. We're talking about how can I do something a different way. Look at how God sees you. And then when you go into work, you're going into it, this is the day the Lord has made. I don't care how dumb everybody else is. I'm going to rejoice and be glad in it. And you're going in with that type of, okay, I'm gonna have a good day. I'm going to praise God no matter what. And you will end up enjoying life a lot more.
So we're focusing on, remember, what the purpose, what we're talking about with being in a supportive role is that we are being the best support that we can be in a situation. We're not focused on what can somebody do to make it easy for me to be a support. What we're saying is we're rock solid. We're going to follow God, and regardless of the situation or regardless of what somebody else does, I am still going to do what I'm supposed to do. In other words, I'm the one that's going to come in and be a support, not, oh, you didn't say that the way I want you to say it. And we have to watch for that. We cannot control how other people act, but we can control our response. And we will be challenged. We have to watch it that we're not like, I don't like the way you said that. You need to be like this. But if you look at it, they're not necessarily even doing anything wrong. They just aren't doing it the way that makes you or me feel the best about ourselves. And we might be intimidated by the way they act. We wish they would say it a little nicer. But the fact is, if you look at the way they act, they're not going to be that way. I'm not talking about they're being mean or anything. They're just not a warm, fuzzy person. And you really would like some affirmation sometimes. And you could get feeling sorry for yourself. Well, I mean, a good boss would say encouraging words sometime. Not all bosses. That's not true. And if we think that, then we're going to become, it's unjust. Or we just need to change our mentality and go, hey, regardless, I'm going to support you. This is just where you are. And it is so true that different people take things differently. I was in a position where I was a manager, and then I had a guy over me. I had my manager who I really enjoyed working with him. And then one of the men on my team, great engineer, great worker. There was some conflict between him and my boss. And my boss had said something. And I heard about it, and I knew exactly what my boss meant. I mean, because I know him. And I'm like, this is what he means. And the other dude, the guy that was on my team, he was ready to quit. I mean, he was like, he wasn't right at the door quit, but he was like, I'm ticked. And I went and talked to my boss, and I'm like, I heard about this. I said, this is what I think you meant. And he goes, that's exactly what I meant. I said, that's not what he thinks you meant. He thinks you mean he's taking it a different way. So in that case, I actually got them both in the same room and said, look, this is what he's saying. No, I said, but this is what he's saying. Is that that's what I'm trying to say. And this is what you heard, right? Yeah, and I was like translating because I knew this. I had a close working relationship, and they were able to patch it up. But we cannot think that somebody is going to change their way of communicating just for us. Could it be ideal? Could it be great? Yeah, and I'm sure there's a lot of things we could do better as an employee. Should they be like, I'm firing you if you don't get this? They could, but then they would be dumb if they were like looking for this ideal as a person, like, no, you need to communicate the way I communicate. No, there's all different types of communication. So what do we want to be? What are we focusing on? Man, I want to be Joseph. I want to be Daniel. Doesn't matter. You can do what you want to do. I'm staying in my place. Throw me in the lion's den. You can sell me as a slave. You can throw me in dungeon. Those things aren't good, but it did not change their course. They were like, Timothy, I've got your back. I'm not moving. Why? Because you're serving Jesus. And the world is not like this. The world is like, you made me mad, I'm quitting jobs. You made me mad, I'm going to leave the church. You made me mad, I'm going to go somewhere else. You get out of the will of God really fast that way. And you will be tested with, I don't care who it is, you're going to be tested to be like, well, this is different. I'm mad. There should be doing this, and I've been there, have to walk through it, but you have to go back to God. What would you have me to do? And am I just looking at this wrong? And boy, I've been in so many situations where you stayed the course. You saw what was really going on, because Satan will feed you lies. He'll paint a picture of what they meant, what they said, just like that was happening with the guy on my team and the boss. And when you see the smoke clear, you're like, oh, thank God I didn't move on that. They didn't even mean that. Yeah. They were just being human. They didn't mean that. They were thinking of something else. They had the wrong thing for lunch, and they just weren't even focused on the conversation or something.
Yeah, this is the last one.
Okay. You want me to read that? So this one is basically a follow-up question to last week, just to sum it up. How do I offer suggestions, ideas, concerns to those I support? So we talked about that. There's a follow-up question about that, like in a job, marriage, church, etc. How do I offer suggestions, ideas, concerns when you are in a supportive role? So again, this is based on the relationship. What does the relationship support? If you don't know anybody on the street and you go up and start trying to tell them something, most people not going to go well. They're going to walk away from you. They're going to, trying to sell me something. It's just, and if you try to tell them what to do, there's no relationship. If you just walk into a place and you start, it's like, I remember one guy I worked with that was a senior guy, and he's like, when somebody tries to start telling you what's wrong, like you're interviewing somebody. You're bringing them in for an interview. And in that interview, they start kind of trying to tell the person that's interviewing, kind of what they would fix, and is like, so you think we're that stupid that you can come in here and talk to us for an hour and you got all our problems fixed? We don't need you. Because you're going to be a problem. Like you think, why are you even interviewing here? Like you don't know us, but you think they're just trivial. Oh, there's this, got it, next. No, so it's the same thing. When you just walk in somewhere, or you're talking to somebody, or you don't have that relationship, and you're like, hey, you should do this. The relationship doesn't support it. Mm-hmm. Is there ever not a place for that? Of course there is. With a husband and wife, it ought not to be that the wife feels like she never can share anything. That's like we've talked about. A wise man's going to be bringing her in and make that way that if he's going to go off a cliff, she's able to say, hey, what about this? Or, hey, I just saw this. Because you have a communication. It's not a dictatorship. It's a partnership. And so that's a covenant, right? That's the highest level of covenant on the earth. Well, then and then between that and a stranger, there's all kinds of grades of, you've known this guy for 5 years. Like I worked with the manager I was talking about. Well, we had a really good working relationship. I could go to him and talk. And this is another thing. A good leader is going to make avenues for these things, okay? Like we would have, in our way of working, when we got done with something, like done we called them sprints, but when we got done with, delivering a piece of functionality or a time of working, for us it was usually 2 weeks, we would have a time of introspection. We would go around and everybody would put sticky notes. What are we doing well? What can we improve on? And we would talk about it. And so we would constantly be course correcting. What can we do better? We should stop doing that. How did that go? So that was built in to the process. I know I would have one-on-ones with the people that I manage. So I would meet with them usually once every 1 or 2 weeks and just sit down and we're just talking. And then my boss would do that with me. So this is a place where regardless of what else is going on, we could talk. And he would ask me, what's going on? Do you have anything? You got anything you want to talk about? Anything's going on? Anything that, bothering you? You wouldn't say it that way, but anything. Yeah, that's where I could talk. And I knew I could talk to him. I mean, I could say, yeah, this person, yeah, I know that's pain, but hey, let's see what we can do about it. Same thing with the people under me. So there was an avenue. But, if one of my people just goes up to another manager and just being like, you guys should be doing that, that's out of order. That's not going to help. They're not going to listen unless they have that relationship. So it is based on that same thing with, if it's a church, there's, if there's leadership, with a group or a different area or pastors, the relationship you have. You might have a group where, you're working as a subgroup and you're working together and what can we do better? There's a suggestion, but there's a place to do that. You don't just out of the blue go just offer it to somebody else. Again, what can the relationship support? When you violate that, people are not going to be receptive. It doesn't matter in what area it's going to be.
And if you are naturally critical, and if you are sowing discord in an organization, whether it's a work, whether it's church, whether it's a volunteer thing that you're doing, if you are the one that is sowing discord, the leadership will not trust you. They will not respect what you have to say. But if you are somebody where they really think you have their heart, their mission, and trust is earned, and it takes time sometimes. But if they believe that you have their heart, their mission, what they're about, they will be more likely to hear what you're saying and want to hear what you're saying and make room for what you are saying because they trust you. And so that's, you want to be that type of person where your leadership can trust you.
And don't assume, if you're in an organization and you see something, don't assume nobody else sees it. And do you have the place? Somebody else may be already talking about it. They're well aware of it. And that the channels are there and they're taking feedback. Somebody has already said, hey, we're working on that. And if I don't have the relationship with them and I see something and I think, well, I see they need to fix this, and I go up and I'm saying stuff, see, that's assuming that, number one, you're basically saying they don't have the competency to see this. You're the only one that sees it. And number two, that they need to hear it from you. You assume that they don't have channels or people that they trust that they've already talked about. Maybe it's just not logistically possible to change everything like there, but they're working on it. You're doing nobody any favors by that. But if you have a relationship with your manager or something, and that's open, and you say, hey, he may be like, yeah, I know, but you don't need to say anything because they're doing that. Or, hey, I can escalate that for you. That's the better way to do it. Go to the place you do have a relationship.
Yeah. And one more thing on that is that sometimes the suggestion or the idea that you have does not actually go along with the mission of the church or of the job or the company or whatever. And so you going and thinking, oh, this really needs to be done, but that's not the vision of the company or the vision of the church. And so that is something to also keep in mind, when you're communicating and you think, oh, it should be done this way. Why can't they see that? Well, it may not be that's in their heart. And so, you want to be respectful of that as well.
And so one more thing, just because I feel like we should touch, we're closing up here, but is there places where you feel like you don't have that path, yet you feel like something you need to talk about and you need to bring, well, I guess I would tread lightly there. Ask yourself, is this really something? Like, in other words, if you don't have a manager that's open that, or a boss that's open that pathway. Okay, number one, I go back to, am I supposed to be here? Because that's the way they're running it. Maybe they don't want, maybe that's not the ideal, but that's the way they're running it. They haven't opened that. But you really feel like this is bothering you. Okay, then ask yourself, is it bothering me? Is this an actual problem, or is it just it's bothering me? Do I need to bring this up, or is it like, hey, this is the way it is. I'm bringing it to God. I'm bringing it to some trusted people. I'm dealing, but it's nothing I really need to make a big deal about. It's not saying you need to just put up with things that were truly wrong, but then you have to ask yourself your questions. Am I supposed to be here? Is it really something that is really a problem, or is it the way I see it? Because I think people, they elevate it to the place where this is such a problem and this is an injustice and I need to go talk to them and they need to, and tread lightly there. It could be, but then you have to say, is this really where I want to be working? Is this where God has me? And ask those questions. And then maybe, because there's a lot of times I felt like, man, I want to say something, but no, I'm supposed to be here and I need to keep my mouth shut. And it was just fine. And I realized later, yeah, I would have been a train wreck had I said anything. So.